The story begins on what seems like a calm and uneventful day. Everything is quiet, until an unexpected knock at the door disrupts the peaceful routine of the protagonist, a young man named Akuto. As he opens the door, he is surprised to find a girl standing there, smiling brightly. Without hesitation, she tells him that she arrived earlier than expected and excitedly mentions the date they had planned for today. To his astonishment, she even adds that she brought homemade food in preparation. Naturally, Akuto is confused. He immediately informs her that he doesn't know who she is. However, rather than backing off, the girl insists, claiming she is his girlfriend and casually trying to step inside his home. Taken aback by her boldness, Akuto blocks her from entering. In response, her expression shifts from cheerful to suspicious. She accuses him of hiding something, more specifically, someone else. In her eyes, his refusal to let her in can only mean there's another woman inside. Still trying to make sense of the situation, Akuto calmly reiterates that she is mistaken. He has never seen her before and, in fact, doesn't even have a girlfriend. At that moment, realization begins to dawn on the girl. She pauses, then sheepishly admits that she might have gotten the wrong apartment. Embarrassed, she explains that she had left her house in a rush, forgetting to wear her contact lenses. To make matters worse, she hadn't clearly heard Akuto's voice through the door, which led to her mistaking him for her actual boyfriend. As it turns out, her boyfriend, or rather, her real one, lives in the apartment right next to Akuto's. Following this bizarre encounter, several weeks go by without incident. Life returns to normal. That is, until one day, Akuto hears the sound of heavy movement coming from the neighboring unit. Peeking out curiously, he notices a moving crew carrying out furniture and boxes. Strangely, he never catches a glimpse of the man who lived there, only the workers. It strikes him as odd, but with no explanation, he brushes it off. A few more quiet days pass, until another unexpected knock echoes through Akuto's apartment. Wondering who it could be this time, he opens the door, only to see the same girl from that unusual day standing before him once again. This time, however, there is no confusion in her eyes. Without hesitation, she explains everything. She begins by revealing that her boyfriend, the man who used to live next door, is no longer in her life. They recently broke up after she discovered he had been cheating on her with multiple women, even bringing them into the very apartment they once shared. Looking back, she confesses that this was the real reason she had acted so strangely during their first meeting. At the time, they were still together, and she had suspected something was wrong. Now, things have changed. Not only is she single, but she's also moving into the apartment her ex-boyfriend vacated. She has, in a twist of fate, become Akuto's new neighbor. Wanting to make amends for the trouble she caused earlier, she brings him a peace offering, a freshly baked cake. Coincidentally, Akuto had just brewed a pot of tea, making the timing rather convenient. After a brief pause, he invites her in. She accepts the offer with a smile, as if she had been hoping for this moment. Once inside, Akuto leads her to the living room and offers her a seat while he prepares to slice the cake. As he does, she playfully tells him not to make her portion too big. After all, the cake was meant for him. Everything seems to be going smoothly, until something unexpected happens. As they continue chatting, the girl suddenly calls him by name, Akuto. Immediately, he freezes. He never told her his name. Sensing his discomfort, she quickly explains that she saw his name on the mailbox downstairs. It had caught her attention because it was unusual, and she hadn't been able to forget it. Though her explanation seems plausible, a small seed of doubt begins to take root in Akuto's mind. Trying to ease the tension, the girl finally introduces herself. Her name is Yu, and with a soft smile, she remarks that everything happening between them feels like destiny, as if the universe itself is trying to bring them together. At that, Akuto relaxes slightly. Perhaps, he thinks, this could mark the beginning of a genuine connection. Still, part of him remains hesitant. After all, she is the ex-girlfriend of the man who used to live just next door. Nevertheless, he sets those thoughts aside for the moment and takes his first bite of the cake. To his surprise, it's incredibly delicious. Noticing his reaction, Yu's face lights up with joy. She admits that it had been a long time since she baked anything for someone special, and she was nervous about how it would turn out. Fortunately, The result exceeded expectations. As they sit together, sharing tea and cake, a new chapter quietly begins. Whether it leads to a heartfelt friendship or something far more complicated remains to be seen, but one thing is certain, their story is just getting started. What began as a calm evening soon took an unexpected turn. Without warning, Ikuto, the protagonist, began to feel a strange heaviness in his eyes. The more he tried to stay alert, the more his vision blurred. A wave of fatigue settled over him, unlike anything he had ever felt before. Despite having felt fine moments earlier, he found himself quickly overwhelmed by a sleepiness he couldn't explain. Eventually, the fatigue won. As he lost consciousness, the last image in his fading vision was that of Yu, gently smiling as she wished him good night. It would later become evident that the cake she had brought him wasn't entirely innocent. Something in it had caused his body to shut down. Several hours passed before Ikuto finally stirred. When he did, he awoke to a sensation that was both warm and soft. Upon opening his eyes, he found himself resting on Yu's lap. Her expression was calm, her eyes filled with what looked like affection. She explained that he had fallen asleep mid-conversation, and assumed he must have overworked himself that day. Embarrassed, Ikuto quickly sat up and apologized for having fallen asleep so suddenly, though he couldn't help but feel unsettled by how easily he had passed out. Yu, however, appeared unbothered. She mentioned that watching him sleep had been rather peaceful, and she didn't mind at all. As Ikuto glanced at the clock, he realized how late it had gotten. He casually mentioned the time, prompting Yu to agree that she should be heading home. Yet before leaving, she turned back and asked if she could come visit again sometime. Ikuto, seeing no reason to decline, gave his consent. After she left, a strange calm settled in the apartment. That was when Ikuto noticed something odd. The dishes had been washed. The room was cleaner than he remembered leaving it. It didn't take long for him to assume that Yu had cleaned up during his nap. This small gesture led him to conclude that she was thoughtful and caring. He also found himself reflecting on how attractive she was. However, what Ikuto failed to realize was that something far more unsettling had occurred while he slept. Yu hadn't simply cleaned the apartment. During the time he was unconscious, she had carefully searched through his belongings. She had taken one of his spare apartment keys. She had placed hidden microphones throughout the rooms. She had gone through his phone and even accessed his credit card information, all in an effort to gather every possible detail about his life. Her obsession had evolved into something far more invasive. In the days that followed, a new scene emerged. Yu was seen doing laundry, but not her own. The clothing she was washing belonged to Ikuto. As she folded each item with care, she quietly muttered that she would become the perfect girlfriend for him. Later that day, Ikuto returned home from work and immediately noticed something strange. All of his dirty laundry had been washed and hung out to dry. Alarmed, he reached for his phone and called the only person he thought could have entered the apartment, his mother. She was the only one with a spare key, but her answer brought no relief. She hadn't been to the apartment at all. Overcome with fear, Ikuto asked if he could stay the night at her house. He needed time to understand what had happened, and who could have gotten inside. But Yu's actions didn't stop there. In the following days, she began secretly following Ikuto. Each morning, from a distance, she observed him as he walked to work. Because of her striking appearance, she often attracted glances from passers-by. Occasionally, some men would approach her with interest. However, each time someone tried to start a conversation, she responded with cold disdain. Her glare alone was enough to send them away. She made it clear she wasn't interested in wasting time. She was waiting for someone she truly liked. Her intensity made sure no one dared to pursue her further. Despite all this, the next few days passed without incident. The tension seemed to lift, at least temporarily. But then, one afternoon, Yu found another opportunity. As Ikuto returned home from work, their paths crossed once again. Quite literally, Yu appeared unexpectedly, and the two accidentally bumped into each other. The impact caused the groceries she had been carrying to fall and scatter across the ground. Ikuto instinctively helped pick them up, and Yu responded as if surprised to see him there, playing the moment as coincidence. As they gathered the fallen items, their hands brushed briefly. Yu paused, affected by the contact. Using the moment to her advantage, She casually mentioned that she had bought too much food and considered inviting him to dinner. However, before she could complete her offer, a sharp voice interrupted them. The voice belonged to Idano, Ikuto's junior at work. His tone carried irritation, and he referred to Ikuto as senpai while walking toward the pair. Upon arriving, the first thing Idano did was ask who the girl was. Yu began to introduce herself politely, but before she could finish, Idano interrupted again. This time, he asked if she was Ikuto's girlfriend. Caught off guard, Ikuto quickly clarified the situation. He stated that Yu was neither his girlfriend nor his partner, just a neighbor and friend. With that answer, Idano finally seemed to relax. Yet, even as the moment passed, the strange energy remained. As the tension between the characters quietly simmered, a new scene began to unfold. Upon witnessing the interaction, Yu couldn't hide her discomfort. Her eyes locked onto Idano, narrowing with a fierce intensity that hinted at something far more dangerous than mere jealousy. It was a glare that carried the weight of silent hostility, a look that, if possible, would have erased her rival on the spot. However, Idano wasn't alone. She had arrived accompanied by one of Ikuto's male co-workers. Seeing an opportunity, the two of them extended a spontaneous invitation to Ikuto to join them for a drink. Without much hesitation, he accepted, unintentionally leaving Yu behind. Putting on a strained smile, Yu bid him farewell. She told him not to worry about her, insisting she would be fine. But beneath her calm facade, Idano seethed. The sight of Ikuto growing closer to another woman had triggered a deep irritation. Still, with forced composure, she told them to go ahead. The two women parted ways, but not without consequence. From that moment onward, the mutual dislike between them solidified into something more intense. Both now saw the other as a direct obstacle, each determined to claim Ikuto for herself. Later that evening, at the venue they had agreed upon, the group's conversation naturally turned toward recent events. One topic stood out, a local accident that had shaken the area. Upon hearing the details, Idano admitted that the news made her uneasy, so much so that she didn't want to return home alone. This comment sparked something in Ikuto. His thoughts drifted to Yu, who had also left by herself. A flicker of concern appeared on his face. Idano noticed it immediately. Confronting the shift in his expression, she told him to relax and enjoy the evening. Yu, she assured him, would be just fine. For now, he should focus on the person standing right in front of him. With that, she raised her glass and invited him to drink. What neither of them realized was that they weren't alone. Unbeknownst to the group, Yu had been listening the entire time. From a hidden distance, she observed their movements and took mental notes. During the conversation, she quietly gathered personal information about Idano, learning her age, her living situation, and more. Upon discovering that Idano was 24 years old and lived alone, Yu's fixation deepened. If this woman intended to get close to Ikuto, Yu would be ready, even if it meant harming her. Hours passed as the group continued drinking. Eventually, the male co-worker excused himself to use the restroom. Seizing the opportunity, Idano turned to Ikuto and proposed they continue drinking elsewhere. Just the two of them, in private. Ikuto immediately understood the implication. Attempting to let her down gently, he declined. As an excuse, he pointed out that they had already consumed quite a bit, and suggested they talk again another time, under more sober circumstances. Though the rejection was tactful, it brought the night to a close. The group dispersed shortly after. Idano left accompanied by Ikuto's co-worker, who offered to escort her to the station. As the two walked together, the unhealthy nature of their dynamic became more apparent. The man flirted openly and without subtlety, while Idano seemed distant, clearly uninterested in his behavior. At one point, they stopped at a nearby convenience store, and the co-worker stepped inside to buy more drinks. Left alone outside, Idano's phone began to ring, an unfamiliar number flashing on the screen. The caller was persistent. After several rings, she answered. The voice on the other end belonged to Yu. Without hesitation, Yu asked whether she had enjoyed the night out. Idano, taken aback but not easily intimidated, responded with sarcasm, even offering mock congratulations for tracking down her number. But Yu wasted no time. Her tone turned cold as she issued a warning. Idano was to stay away from Ikuto if she didn't want trouble. Idano let out a short laugh. In her mind, there was no threat, Only a jealous woman blowing things out of proportion. She reassured Yu, still with mocking calm, that there was nothing to worry about. They were simply co-workers enjoying a night out, nothing more. For the time being, that answer was enough to avoid further escalation. But Yu didn't back off completely. Instead, she silently resolved to keep Edano under close watch, making sure she honored her word. Moments later, the co-worker returned from the store. Edano, now visibly more guarded, casually informed him that she had changed her mind about their plans for the rest of the evening. Meanwhile, the story shifted back to Ikuto. Later that night, after a long and exhausting day, he was preparing to go to bed when an unexpected knock came at his door. Curious and slightly apprehensive, he opened it, only to find his two co-workers standing outside. What immediately caught his attention was the fact that Edano appeared to be heavily intoxicated, unable to stand on her own. His male co-worker, supporting her with one arm, explained the situation. After Ikuto had left, the two of them continued drinking, and Edano had ended up like this. The problem was, he didn't know where she lived, and with work the next morning, he needed to leave. His solution was to bring her to Ikuto's place and leave her in his care. With that, he handed Edano over and left without further explanation, completely unaware that Edano's plan had just worked perfectly. Now left alone with her, Ikuto helped her into the living room. Seeing the time, he suggested they both get some rest. He offered to sleep on the couch and told her she could use his bed. But Edano had a different idea. Instead of accepting the arrangement, she proposed that they sleep together. Ikuto, caught off guard by the suggestion, immediately declined. Although he was surprised, he had no intention of taking advantage of someone in that state. He insisted that the sofa was just fine for him. Eventually, the moment passed without further incident. Ikuto lay down on the couch, while Edano remained in the room he had offered. The night came to a quiet end, for now. As the night wore on, the apartment remained still. Hours passed, yet Edano had not fallen asleep. Though her body was tired, her mind remained restless. A lingering sense of disappointment hovered over her. Nothing had happened between her and Ikuto. Despite the opportunity, the night had ended without the spark she had hoped for. But then, her thoughts drifted back to something that stirred a deeper frustration. The memory of the phone call she had received earlier. The voice on the other end had belonged to a woman, cold and possessive, warning her to stay away from the man she liked. That woman was clearly trying to take control of the situation, and Edano wasn't about to let that happen. Determined to reassert herself, Edano made up her mind. She refused to lose to a jealous stranger. She wouldn't allow someone else to step in and become the girlfriend of the man she had set her sights on. With renewed resolve, she slowly approached the living room, where Ikuto was still fast asleep on the couch. However, unbeknownst to her, a figure lurked silently in the shadows, watching her every move. As Edano leaned in, preparing to steal a quiet kiss, a thought crossed her mind. A moment like this deserved to be remembered. She wanted proof, something to look back on. Reaching into her pocket, she pulled out her phone and opened the camera, intending to capture the kiss. But just as the screen lit up, she noticed something unexpected. A faint silhouette reflected behind her. Startled, she turned around, but before she could process what she saw, a wave of fear overtook her. A shadowy figure emerged from the darkness and struck. Without making a sound, the figure dragged Edano out of the apartment, disappearing into the night. That shadow, as one might expect, belonged to you. In her eyes, no one had the right to be with Ikuto but her. No one else was allowed to touch him, let alone love him. The story then shifted to the following morning. As sunlight filtered into the room, Ikuto slowly woke up. The first thing he noticed was that Edano was no longer in his apartment. For a brief moment, he wondered when she had left. Just then, a message arrived on his phone. It was a text from Edano, at least, it appeared to be. The message thanked him for everything he had done the night before, and explained that she had left early so as not to inconvenience him. What Ikuto didn't realize was that the message hadn't been written by Edano at all. It had been sent by Yu. In her mind, she was protecting him from other women, from unwanted advances, from anything that might threaten their bond. From now on, she would keep him safe, even if he didn't know it. A few minutes later, another knock echoed at his door. When Ikuto opened it, he found Yu standing there. She greeted him with a warm smile and explained that she had stopped by to check on him. After all, he had gone out drinking the night before, and she thought he might be feeling unwell. Her concern put him at ease. But what she said next left a deeper impression. She confessed that she had simply wanted to see him. Though her words were direct, she quickly downplayed them, saying she didn't want to give him the wrong idea. Still, the moment lingered in the air. Shortly after, she mentioned that she had something to ask. The atmosphere grew slightly tense. She asked whether Ikuto had invited anyone over to his apartment the previous night. Caught off guard, Ikuto explained that one of his co-workers, Idano, had been too drunk to return home, so she stayed over. He recounted the events calmly, with nothing to hide. Upon hearing the explanation, Yu's expression softened. She seemed relieved. Ikuto, however, was curious. He asked how she even knew someone had stayed over. Yu brushed the question aside, saying it had simply been a hunch. What she truly wanted to say was far more controlling, that no other woman should be allowed into his apartment. Ikuto, still unaware of the danger he was in, reassured her that it wouldn't happen again. He admitted that, aside from Idano, he didn't really know many other women. Satisfied with his answer, Yu smiled and said she needed to return to her shop, mentioning that she had left it open. This revelation surprised Ikuto. He hadn't known she ran a business. Yu explained that she owned a small pastry shop called Luna Nova. The name immediately made sense to Ikuto. He commented on how good her cakes were, especially the one she had given him earlier. Yu, delighted by the compliment, invited him to stop by any time. She promised that if he did, she would serve him personally. With that, she left. For a moment, Ikuto found himself thinking about her. The idea of visiting her shop now lingered in his mind. However, that thought was quickly interrupted by a message from another coworker. The message asked whether Idano had made it home safely. Ikuto replied that she had left early in the morning, assuming all was well. But the coworker's next response raised concern. He explained that no one had been able to contact Idano since that morning. Ikuto found this strange. The scene then shifted once again. Inside Luna Nova, Yu stood behind the counter, happily preparing a fresh cake. A soft hum escaped her lips as she worked. Her phone buzzed with a message. It was from Ikuto, thanking her for checking on him and asking if he could visit her shop the next day. A gentle smile formed on her face. After putting the final touches on the cake, she set it aside and made her way toward a door at the back of the shop. Descending a set of stairs, she reached a heavily secured basement. Inside that hidden room, someone was waiting. That person was Idano, bound, silent, and hidden from the world. She now awaited the cake that Yu had so kindly prepared for her. But this wasn't an act of kindness. Yu had brought her there for a reason. And from this moment forward, Idano would be educated, taught to never stand between Yu and her beloved again.